Halmurat Harri, you are a Uyghur. Can you tell us a bit about the situation, in particular, if you don't mind, the situation of your family?
Well, thank you for having me. And situation of my family now, they are basically they released it in one of the concentration camps in Turpan. Turpan is one of the historic city located in the eastern part of the Uyghur region. We prefer to call it Turkestan. After the release, 24th December 2018, they are kind of under house arrest, and I cannot call them directly. I contact them only once via Skype. They were in somewhere called office, and they can contact me under supervision, and I have to make reservation to call them before I call them. Then we cannot talk. We cannot talk normally. Even with my parents, even very basic daily things, we cannot talk. They always repeat kind of propagandas, and it makes me feel so bad. Even though I hear their voice, I'm happy, but I don't want to put them into that kind of situation. That's why I refuse to call them again.
And would you describe your parents as terrorists?
Well, no, of course, but they don't have any religious or political ambitions. They don't. When I was in the region, in my childhood memory, until I went to the university, went to the high school, I never seen my parents actually practicing any religion, and they never talk about any kind of political ambitions or politics. So normally terrorists could be something like have a kind of different kind of political agendas. They use religious or political ideologies as a kind of container to input to the people. My parents are not, and they are quite secular. They are retired civil servants. They don't fit in that category.
And why do you think the Chinese authorities are doing this then? I mean, it's a huge enterprise, locking up literally millions of people. We know that it's at least 1 million people from reports. What is the objective, do you think?
It's difficult to answer this question. Like in my parents' case, they don't need vocational trainings. They are already retired, and they both speak Mandarin Chinese, even better than some Chinese. Like because the Mandarin is not local language of many ethnic Chinese. So there are many Uyghur scholars like Halmurat Harri, who's the professor, not professor, head of the medical university. He don't need any kind of vocational trainings. It's very difficult to answer, so I think you should ask from the scholars these questions, but my expression is my parents being detained just because they're ethnic Uyghur and they have a son who live abroad.
Just ask, sorry, going back a bit, but why were your parents detained? What was the reason given for their detention? We heard of some very odd explanations during some of the presentations. In the case of your parents, why were they seen as a threat?
I don't think they are a threat. My father says when my mother detained in the first time, in the first place, he says the community organized a school for your mother to teach her Chinese and teach her the patriotism or kind of political agendas. My mother graded university in Beijing. She speaks Chinese. She already mastered Chinese. She don't need to learn language, and she retired from the Turpan newspaper. It is a propaganda machine of Communist Party. She know everything. So she don't need to learn any kind of this kind of propagandas anymore.
Living in Finland, you're in the European Union. Are there many Uyghurs here in Europe, not just in Finland? And given the scale of this problem, what can the EU do? What sort of action would you like to see the European Union do? And we've got European elections coming up. What would you like to see the new MEPs do?
There are not any statistics done on the Uyghur population in Europe, but I estimate maybe 8,000 to 10,000 Uyghurs, and many of them now, I guess, become European citizens like me. I hope, like, as we are the citizens of member states, I mean the member countries of the European Union, and when cornerstone of European Union is human rights, and as a European, our very basic human rights are abused by the other country, the other government, like China. As a European and as a human being, I have every right to contact with my parents, know whereabout my parents, know well-being of my parents. Even they are not committed any crime, they are not terrorists, they are not politically active. Even though they are a criminal who detained in a prison, as a human being, I should have access to know about their well-being.